Ever wonder why some business leaders are able to use customer insights to create enormous success while others are not? Business leaders today have access to more customer data, dashboards, stories, even insights than at any time in history. Yet, and here's what nobody tells you, for over 90% of all companies, they've not seen one business success metric increase because of this. In fact, many companies are experiencing the exact opposite. Because when the moment comes to make a real business decision for the company, you're still relying on instinct. Not because you want to, because you have to. If you're a business leader trying to turn insight into real decisions, this channel is built for you. I'm John Burshak. I've spent my entire career working at the intersection of customer insight and real-time decisions. I've worked across hundreds of companies, industries, and decision situations. And here's the real question. Why do smart organizations still struggle to turn insight into real business impact? Because something breaks right here. Customer data, insights, and then nothing. No clear path to decision making. That's the insight to decision gap. And when that gap exists, instinct has to step in to fill it. Here's what everyone thinks happens. You gather data, you generate insights, leaders make better decisions, and business improves. That's the story, and we're sticking to it. Now, here's what actually happens. Data is gathered, insights are generated, and then they sit, fenced away from business-critical decision-making. Why? Because a system breaks at one critical point. It was never designed to answer the question, what should we actually do? I tried to solve this myself. I built a company. It was called NetRaker. It was the first, and to this very day, the only platform that did it all. You wanted to do surveys? Great, go do them. User experience? Have at it. Communities? Build them. Clickstream analysis, all the way through to full customer experience management. We were research, CX, UX, and human X long before it was fashionable, all in one place. I thought if leaders had everything, they could answer anything. I was wrong. We had more data than ever. We had more insight than ever, and still no better decisions. Because optimization is not the same as strategic direction. Here's what really is happening out there. Smart business leaders don't need any more information. They need real-world business clarity, trustworthy to the point of inspiring confidence, delivered as decision-ready input. They don't have time to figure this out themselves, and if their insight function doesn't deliver this, smart leaders default to instinct, not because they want to ignore insight, but because it doesn't answer the business questions and decisions that they face. Doing this, I discovered something, and I came to it the hard way. I worked across hundreds of companies, many industries, thousands of insight initiatives, from early stage companies trying to find direction to some of the most sophisticated organizations in the world, companies like Amazon, Apple, and Toyota. And here's what I saw. Over and over again, smart teams doing what they thought was right, creating data everywhere, insights laying around everywhere, and still no clear answers for business leaders when it mattered most. And that's when I discovered this isn't a capability problem. It's a decision design problem. And insight only becomes valuable when it crosses a very specific threshold. I call that decision-grade intelligence. Decision-grade intelligence means insight that is trusted, specific, answers business questions, designed for the decision itself. Because if it doesn't meet that bar, it will never move the business. So how do you actually create this? With a system, of course. The Actionable Insight to Impact Method, or AIM. AIM flips the entire process. Instead of starting with data, it starts with a question. What decisions are we trying to make? And this has to be answered by an engaged business leader. And then, what would we do if we knew the answer? This is where the business-savvy intelligence developer takes what is needed by the executives and converts it into the system that will get smart business leaders the answers they need. Imagine a CEO who wants to launch a new premium product line. Most insight teams spend months asking, do people like this? We do not do that. We start with the decision. We ask leadership, if you find that current customers won't pay the 30% premium, will you kill the project today? If the leader says, nope, I am launching it anyway, we don't do the work. We've just saved the company not only money, but more importantly, the possible embarrassment of ignoring contradictory customer insights. But if they say yes, then we can design intelligence that doesn't just inform, it triggers a multi-million-dollar go versus no-go action. We find the correct question that actually moves the needle. This changes everything. That's AIM in a nutshell. Decision first, data second. But don't take my word for it. Here's Tim at Blackstone Products describing how they stopped guessing and built programs that actually moved their customers so they could win. While you're watching the success stories, watch for the blue AIM output square to know exactly how the AIM system and decision-grade intelligence connected the dots for Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Pearson, and I've been in non-traditional marketing my entire life. I started my career in the pro sports world and spent time working not only for the NFL, but also for Sony Music on the music side. My most recent positions were at Time Life, managing their non-traditional business. So not the CDs, cruise ships, things like that, but doing partnerships with people like Kid Rock, Wolfgang Puck, T-Fall, and doing long-form infomercials driven by direct-to-consumer with retail overlays. Most recently, I started my own consulting business, and I've been consulting with Blackstone Products for over 6 years now. John's been doing a number of great pieces of work for us. We were looking for a firm that had big research company background and expertise, that had done hundreds of programs. My team brainstormed ideas. We came up with a bunch of ideas, but until we engaged with Bershek Research, we really were just guessing. John and his team were able to put those concepts into a form and do research against the potential target audience and let us know what would resonate and what didn't. And of the items that we put up, one came back clearly the winner, but it wasn't the one that we thought it was going to be. So the research really drove the direction that we needed. The project was ultimately very successful, and that's due in large part to us being able to narrow our focus based on the Bershek research team. Most recently, dealing with Bershek at Blackstone, we've been able to identify the key competitors and put aside loud but niche competitors that we did not need to focus on. Bershek was able to help us focus on the key issues and stay a concentrated effort towards them and not get distracted by the noise in the marketplace. Bershek is excellent to work with. They're very focused on a win-win presentation with actionable results that we could immediately execute to solve either current issues or to anticipate issues 6 to 12 months out or 24 to 48 months out and understand where the marketplace was going. So I would highly recommend Bershek to anyone who's wants a personalized touch and wants not only top-notch research, but actionable research that can get at what your specific needs are.
Did you hear it? They were guessing, then they knew. Not just what the customers thought, but what to do. That's the difference. Let's hear the results of this directly from Scott at Blackstone. When we started with Scott, we didn't ask, what would you want to know? We asked, what decision are you paralyzed by? He told us they were in the dark about consumer sentiment, but specifically they needed to know if they could own the value conversation. Listen to how that action-first focus led to a Feed 4 for $20 campaign.
I'm Scott Stevenson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Blackstone Products. We really were blind to a lot of consumer sentiment and even just down to how people felt about our brand in comparison to other brands. So we were kind of in the dark. The most valuable thing for us with using Bershek was gathering data over time and see where we're going in the market. And it really has helped us shape our message. One of the areas we dug into were consumer sentiments around the economy and how many people were using our product, and then what their expectations were to spend if they weren't going to use our product, if they were going to go out to dinner, that most people were cooking for a family between 2 and 4 people, and they were going to spend a certain amount of money. So we really drilled down on that information, and Bershek came back with really great information that told us there's a very specific customer using our product that was cooking for a certain amount of people, and their expectations around cooking a meal. If they were not going to cook at home, if they went out to eat, they would spend a certain amount of money. So we went back and ended up crafting a message to our consumers about if they used our product, and then we gave them a program now where they can actually cook for a family of 4 for way under that amount of money, and really gave our customers something of real value because of that information. We created a program called Feed 4 for 20. So you can feed your entire family of 4 for under $20. We provide the recipe, the video recipe, the written recipe, and a whole grocery list that always equals $20 or less to feed your family a meal every time. That's been incredibly successful for us. We've so far had close to 12 million views on those videos, produced about 80 different videos for those, and the reaction from the consumer has been gigantic. And on top of that, we partnered with one of our retail partners with that, and they've seen a huge amount of success, and they've loved it. They just don't see anybody else in the market doing that kind of stuff. And it really was that information that we got from our Bershek research study that helped us drill down to that exact message to the consumer. It was a huge success and continues to be. Our overall experience with Bershek has just been easy. They present the information in a real digestible way so that my whole team can take it in and really understand what all of this large amount of data actually means to us. So that's been huge for us. I would highly recommend Bershek, mainly because there's things that Bershek brings to the table that you're not even considering. So you want a partner to be looking at the questions and the hypothesis you have about your industry, but you want somebody else to go a step beyond that and really dive into things that you weren't considering, point you in directions that will help you gather different kinds of data that you were considering. They'll get all the data that you're asking for, but they'll go above and beyond and make sure that they're getting the full story from start to finish. So highly recommend them.
So let's step back for a second and look at what really happened here with Blackstone. This wasn't just better insight. This wasn't just more data. Blackstone made different decisions than they ever even imagined. A lot of them. Because they finally had the right answers. First, they identified their true competitive target. It was not the obvious ones everyone else was telling them. And this one true answer changed everything. Second, this was not a one-time insight. They built on it over time. They created a system that kept making their decisions better, a flywheel approach to business success, growing each year's learnings into next year's market success, and then repeating the process, all built upon decision-grade intelligence. Third, and most importantly, they grounded their whole strategy in real human behavior, not personas, not synthetic modeling, not AI hallucinations, actual human realities. And when you do that, this is what happens. Tens of millions of consumer engagements, stronger consumer advocacy and sentiment, clearer, focused strategy, sustained category-leading growth, and ultimately, a category-defining merger. Blackstone catapulted its growth from startup to leading the company who founded the entire 75-year-old industry. No one even imagined that could happen before starting this process. This is what happens when decision-grade intelligence actually drives decisions. This is what decision-grade intelligence looks like, sounds like, feels like. It answers the decision need. It reduces uncertainty. It drives action. So now the question for you is simple. Are you getting information or answers? Because those are not the same thing. The instincts of smart business leaders typically do not beat decision-grade intelligence. They do, however, become the only option when your insight function is not built for the decision. You need decision-grade intelligence that lets you decide. And if you're hearing this and it's something that you're starting to see in your own business, I encourage you to watch the next episode.